Hello YouTube, Bridge Building Heathen here, and you may have noticed that I've mentioned at least a couple times some of Lacey Green's videos. I admit I'm using some of them as a launching off point for some of my own discussions, but mostly as kind of a basic structural thing. I'm definitely not going to follow all of her train of thought. I just, you gotta start somewhere, and I figured, hey, why not? So, one thing that kind of came up in all of this before they had a big thrash out over something else that was tweeted came up on Milo Stewart's threads on Twitter. He retweeted Xenia Jones saying that one of Lacey Green's videos was the first time that he was introduced to the idea that gender and sex aren't necessarily related, and it was a Lacey Green video about boys with vaginas that was posted. And Milo just retweeted it and commented. And what I said back was, I don't know that Lacey Green denied that in some of what she's presented. The whole thing about that section of her video was kind of word salad in my opinion, at least the first time listening to it. But I think what Lacey was trying to say is that male is a sex term, but man or boy is a gender term, and that female is a sex term, but woman or girl is a gender term. And Lacey just kind of spelled out badly that she was trying to put it that way, very badly. I'm pretty sure Milo saw those tweets and liked them, if I recall correctly. But I feel like that's some of where Lacey was going with that, and she just didn't spell it out. But even those statements are going to cause problems for people on the right. So we're going to unpack a lot about sex and gender today. And that's my way of introducing that. So there's the whole idea of phenotypes not being the full determiner. Lacey lists things like breasts, a vagina, the uterus, estrogen, less body hair as female, and someone points out, not female as a sex term, not a gender term in this case, mind you. And someone points out that the collection of phenotypes means that the definition of female is reductive. And Lacey agreed, saying that she was contradicting herself because, phenotype isn't genotype. You have to throw in genes there. And there's also people who believe that intersex or other chromosomes in other species proves that sex is a social construct. But actually, most intersex activism orgs don't believe that intersex is a third sex. It is the body not able to pick between sexes. And a couple of those organizations don't even know if they are comfortable with third gender pronouns yet for intersex people, which I thought was kind of interesting. And I thought it was also telling that Lacey Green listed the anti-feminism position as gender as biology, because that's not always true. There are some anti-feminists who don't see it that way. Blair White, for example, is anti-feminist, but she definitely doesn't see her gender as just her biology. Whereas on the other side of the coin, you have some feminists who take different ideas on gender and biology and how they interrelate. Lacey also lists things like chromosomes, hormones, primary sex characteristics, and secondary sex characteristics, and is willing to cite where the major sex differences influenced by biology are motor function, masturbation, and casual sex. And everything else is nature and nurture, not just nature. That's somewhat true. There's also some issues in terms of the rods and cones in the eye. So we're getting into this space where we're talking about sex and the dividers between it. And since I've already brought up the intersex topic, only about 1 in every 2,000 people is intersex. That's not entirely true. If you're counting all hormone instabilities, it can be as much as 1 in 200, but that's still about half of 1%. And for as much as people on the left like to use intersex people as kind of their shield in debates about sex, I had an intersex friend who was driven off of Tumblr. This person had XY chromosomes and did have a penis, but had androgen insensitivity disorder and had decided to go ahead and transition to female as they grew older. And this intersex friend had pretty severe dysphoria about having a penis and was driven off of Tumblr and given a lot of hate mail for referring to her own penis in a personal journal entry as a boy part. And she was given pretty much every sort of hate you can imagine, including, the whole people telling her to go kill herself, which is awful. That should have never happened. I mean, this person already has such a complex that they started getting mental health issues and, dissociative issues specifically over the fact that her parents really wanted her to be a boy, and that's just not how nature worked it out. 'Cause she hit her teen years and she grew boobs just as she was already because she didn't have the testosterone to have a male puberty. And her parents are really conservative. She's also Hispanic. Her parents, I'm not trying to give too much identifying information on this person. Not that you can narrow it down much by intersex and Hispanic. But her parents are really conservative Catholics, and they really wanted a son. And this really frowled a lot of things up for her mentally. And for Tumblr to have treated her like this, just for calling a part of her own body a boy part, is so messed up. She has been through so much. She didn't deserve that. I mean, she's the sort of person that Tumblr was basically made for. She's got a physical disorder, she's got mental health issues, she's POC, she's trans, she's intersex, and she got chased off Tumblr for a phrase. Tumblr users told her to go die in a hole for daring to express her dysphoria the quote-unquote wrong way, the politically incorrect way. And that should never have happened. But, using intersex as the middle ground and talking about male and female as sex, not gender and gender roles yet. We're not there yet. We're just talking about chromosomes and body parts right now. Skipping around to another part of YouTube, there's that whole Google memo fiasco and people talking about what's inherently male and female and how much of it is controlled by hormones. And I've got to call Bearing out on some BS, because in a recent live stream that he did that had Helping Hand and Rez Please and one other person, before Rez got there, so I'm not blaming her for this at all. It wasn't him, it was one of his two guests, either Helping Hand or the other one who was there. They were making it sound like basically a fifth of women were intersex, because, only 20% of the engineers at Google, they basically made it sound like only about 20% of women are willing to go into STEM fields. And that might be because of testosterone being higher because of a syndrome called congenital adrenal hyperplasia. And they made it sound like up to 20% of women have this. And that's not true. The number of cases per year recorded of this disorder are actually around about, or even slightly less, than the incidences of Klinefelter syndrome. And if you're not familiar with Klinefelter syndrome, that's where you have XXY chromosomes. So that's frelled up right there, that he can blame all of that on testosterone. I mean, look, guys, some people just have different interests. And labeling science as a male interest is like saying cooking is a female-only interest. And please, go tell that to Gordon Ramsay. I'll wait over here. You can't always blame everything on a physical disorder. Not everything is physical sex. Some things are societal. And even when they're not societal, sometimes it's just people have different interests. I mean, you say only a fifth of women are willing to go into STEM, but it sounded like you were basing that on only a fifth of the STEM departments being women. What percent of men go into STEM as opposed to other trade work? What percent of guys, go in and say, I'm going to get an engineering degree instead of saying, well, I'm going to be a trucker or I'm going to work at, I live out in a rural area, right? I'm out in Appalachia. Most of the work out here is truckers, nurses, people who cut hair, factory workers, and that can be machine operators. It can also be like textile plants, things like that. And the textile plants are mostly women, even if they're working with big industrial lasers. It's still... There are a lot of people doing a lot of dangerous jobs. And what drives someone to do that versus, tech? But next time's topic, we're finally going to get into specifically trans issues. But in the meantime, just know that not everything is inborn. We're not total blank slates. But a lot of what comes to us is baggage brought on by our families. It's just the way it is, man. A lot of our interests depend on what we grow up around. I mean, my parents are super fundamentalists, but one of them, in spite of being a fundamentalist, does something that passes for science, and the other one, music. So I wound up with a healthy interest in the arts, as well as a healthy interest in science, and a rather large, almost to the point of being unhealthy, even by conservative Christian standards, because it was super scrupulous and messed up for a while there. But a large interest in religion that still hasn't left me. I'm still, very much a religious and or spiritual person. And I've definitely done my best to combine those three worlds. But the fact that I'm able to, in some ways, really is because of the environment in which I was raised. Yeah, next time, trans issues. So, everyone, take care. Let's go out and build some bridges.